Welcome to episode 2 of The Power of Visualization. I asked in the first episode, have you ever said yourself or heard someone else say, I'll believe it when I see it? Well, if so, what people mean by that is if someone makes an extraordinary claim, then somebody's going to say, well, listen, I don't just believe it because you say it. If I see it, I'll believe it. Well, that's true. It's true that if you see things with your physical eyes, it will shape the way you believe. But there are more powerful eyes, as I said in the first episode, that control a much, much deeper, much more powerful, life-affecting result in your life, and that is the power of your imagination, your visualization power, the power that you have to see with the eyes of your mind. So when it comes to our inner eyes and what we see, as I said, you can have that end result be positive, or you can have the end result be negative or destructive. The positive results are obviously those things which we, use to create, positive futures for ourselves in terms of what we do, finances, relationships, how we envision the future of our children, how we envision the future of our job or career, how we see ourselves in terms of, our livelihood, the well-being of our totality of life. All of these things are affected by the visual power of our mind, and we use it that way all the time. But as I said, you can also use this destructively. You can use this to visualize, for example, speculative things about what people are saying about you. There are people who literally drive themselves crazy because they get so worked up in their minds about what they think people are saying about them, what they think is being said or done in their absence. And so it drives them crazy. They drive themselves crazy by the visual power of their mind. And this affects self-esteem, does it not? It's the extreme example would be paranoia, where you just really literally feel like people are out to get you. If someone says something always happens to them, those are people who have a negative outlook on life, and they always see things that way. I interact with certain people who, no matter what, before anything has actually happened, they've already envisioned the negative. They've already envisioned failure. They've already envisioned, things working and circumstances working against them. But it hasn't even taken place yet. It's as if they believe there is a fate from which they cannot escape. Well, where do they derive this from? Well, they derive it from their personal history. They believe the future is going to resemble the past, not because of their actions, but simply because there is a power or fate that is creating this for them. Something has predetermined that their life is supposed to be this way. They might look back to a parent and say, well, my dad was this way, my mom was this way, or, I've turned out just like my Uncle Joe, or whatever it may be. We look at these things as somehow determinative to our lives, that we can't change them. Well, we're just German, or we're just Irish, or we're just Italian, so I have to be this way. No, you don't have to be anything. But we visualize based on what we think. We visualize based on what we believe, and so we create an even more fortified, deeper belief. And it's being determined by it's being strengthened by the continual use of the visual power of our mind. So when I deal with people who are of poor self-esteem, it tends to be because of what they visualize. So in that sense, everybody is dealing with their own reality, right? Because their perception is their reality, the way that they perceive it, the way that they understand it. And again, we've talked a lot about that in previous video series. That so much of what happens to you is determined by your perception, determined by your interpretation of your circumstances. Do you interpret it as, again, more evidence that you're born to lose? Or do you just interpret something negative happening as just an obstacle or hindrance that you have to overcome? It's a temporary thing that you will defeat like you've defeated them in the past. That's one way of looking at it. Another person looks at it and says, oh my God, I had another setback. See, I'm a born loser. Bad things always happen to me. That's about perception. So the problem is, if that's your basis, if that's the way that you think, you will then take that to reinforce your negative belief by visualizing the future as being more of the same. In other words, a negative thing happens to you and you say, damn, here's more evidence that I'm born to lose. Here's more evidence that this stuff always happens to me. What do? You immediately see your future filled with the same hindrances and problems. You see it as an inescapable, vicious cycle. That's how powerful the visual part of your mind is from a negative standpoint. And so you've got to be able to control both. You've got to be able to deal with these negative perceptions. You've got to be able to deal, you know what I mean, with these negative interpretations, the negative meanings that you imply or give to your circumstances, and break them. And make sure, be very intentional that you do not use the visual power of your mind to reinforce it. So when a negative thing happens, you're going to have to be very intentional about it. Something negative happens, you have to stop yourself and say, whoa, I know this stuff happens a lot. I know I believe it's going to happen to me always, but I reject that right now. I reject that thought. I do not give it entrance. I do not allow it to find habitation in my mind. And I will use my visual power right now to see myself overcoming not just this problem, but every problem I will ever face, because I am a conqueror. I have all the power that I need to dominate, to change these circumstances. I will not be overcome by them. You have to become intentional because you have such a habit of negative perception, such a habit of negative visualization. You've got to become absolutely intentional, not just daily, momentarily. That's how much these things are controlling. If you say, CJ, that's overbearing, man, that's a lot to have to deal with. Well, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry that you've spent your whole life thinking a certain way. I'm very sorry. Yes, you could just say, the work is too much for me to do. I'll just coast through life and live and accept the negative circumstances and keep interpreting things the way I do. Go for it, man. Go for it. Stress yourself out, lose sleep, release harmful adrenaline, mess up all your relationships, suffer financially, don't do the things that you really want to do with your life, stay in the dead-end job. You're welcome to do that, or you can do the work. The whole purpose of the Life Domination Online Coaching Program is to equip you, empower you, and encourage you to stay in the fight, keep doing the work, and to never give up. So again, every day, dealing with your negative perceptions, and then how you use those to create negative visualization of the future, that has to be changed. You got to work on it daily, and I'm going to help you get that done this week. Can you dig that? I hope you can.